Hello, I'm Claire Richardson. Welcome to our special coverage on Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, who has died at the age of 96. She passed away surrounded by her children and other family members at the Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Buckingham Palace has just made the announcement. Now, people are already beginning to gather to pay their respects to Britain's longest reigning monarch, renowned for her sense of unfailing duty. And tributes pouring in from around the world for a woman who was not only the British Queen, but also the head of the Commonwealth. Members of the royal family had rushed to Scotland to be by the side of the Queen after doctors took the extremely unusual step of saying they were concerned about the health of the monarch and that she should remain under medical supervision. Let's get straight across to our correspondent, Carl Nasman, who's going to join us outside of Buckingham Palace. We'll be going to him in just a moment. First, though, we're going to speak to DW's Alex Forrest-Whiting, who covers UK politics, to get more on this momentous development. Alex, tell us more about what we know so far.
I mean, really, Claire, this is momentous. This Queen Elizabeth II had been the reigning monarch for 70 years. This was her 70th anniversary year of being Queen. She came to the throne in 1952. And now, after 7 decades, she has passed away in Balmoral. That is her residency in the north of Scotland. And as you said, surrounded by her closest family members who spent the day trying to get to her bedside as quickly as possible. Just within the last hour, we know that some of her own children had arrived at Aberdeen Airport and then made the journey to Balmoral to see the Queen and to be with her. Prince Charles, her son, was with her at the time, and also his sister, Princess Anne, and other members of the family as well. But I cannot begin to even describe what a huge moment this is, not just for people across the United Kingdom, but people across the world, given that she was the head of state of 14 other countries apart from the UK. So this is an extraordinary announcement that has been made.
And we are just looking at footage of Buckingham Palace, that flag flying at half-mast. Alex, she was not in London, but you mentioned at the Scottish residence. Why was she there?
She was supposed to be back at Buckingham Palace. She spent her summer at Balmoral, but she was clearly unwell to be able to make the journey back to London. And this was an enormous week in British politics. The politics said goodbye to Boris Johnson, who was Prime Minister, and welcomed in Liz Truss, who is the new British Prime Minister. It should have this handover should have happened at Buckingham Palace in London, but instead they both had to travel to Balmoral to meet the Queen there, and that became very clear that she was not well and could not make the journey back to Buckingham Palace. We knew that she had mobility problems in the run-up to this, but then only today did did Buckingham Palace make it clear that doctors were very concerned about her health, and so concerned that her family members had to make the trip up to Balmoral to be with her by her bedside.
Indeed, that lunchtime announcement, they said the Queen was comfortable, highly unusual for them to make this sort of announcement.
Absolutely.
We've already heard people sending her well wishes. Those people who were able to travel to Balmoral to be by her side, the royal family, can you tell us a little bit more about who was there?
Yeah, so we know that Prince Charles, who should now be King Charles, was at Balmoral already, along with his sister, Princess Anne. And before she died, we understand that her other children, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward, also arrived in time, as did Prince William, her grandson. We also understood that his brother, Prince Harry, was on his to Balmoral. I cannot tell you if he got there in time or not, because as you said, the announcement has just been made, but she was certainly surrounded by those very closest to her.
Thank you, Alex, so much for that. Queen Elizabeth performed her last official duties on Tuesday when she appointed Liz Truss as the new UK Prime Minister after accepting the resignation of outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We know that although she'd increasingly withdrawn from high-profile royal duties in recent years, she did spend her 7-decade reign dedicated to the role of the Queen. We're looking there at pictures from Buckingham Palace as crowds gather.
No British monarch reigned for as long as Queen Elizabeth II. She was a constant in a time of dramatic change. Always disciplined, always dutiful, a life of public service, right until the end. In 1926, Elizabeth came into the world. She was not born to be queen, but when her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated after less than a year on the throne, Elizabeth's father was crowned king, and his daughter suddenly became the crown princess. She accepted the task and took it seriously even in her youth.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
During World War II, Elizabeth did her military service as a mechanic. After the war, she married naval officer Philip Mountbatten, her great love. 1 year later, Prince Charles was born, the first of 4 children. In February 1952, her father, King George VI, died. Elizabeth replaced him while on a trip to Africa.
The tragic news reached Princess Elizabeth and her husband while in Kenya, and the new queen left immediately for London.
Elizabeth II was only 25 years of age. Her coronation ceremony did not take place until the following year, in June 1953. The ceremony itself was one of the first world events to be broadcast on television. An estimated 300 million people watched around the globe. The Queen took the throne at a time when the British Empire was losing its importance. Many former colonies gained their independence, while at the same time, a new global conflict began with the Cold War. As Queen, Elizabeth was not allowed to pursue her own political agenda. But she was the most important representative of her country and head of the Commonwealth. In that role, she tirelessly traveled the world in the decades that followed. At home, Elizabeth was intent on boosting the royal family's popularity, also with the help of the media. The spectacular wedding of her son Charles to Diana Spencer in the summer of 1981 was the most watched TV broadcast of all time. But when what appeared to be a perfect royal family life began to unravel, the tabloid press was merciless. In the 1990s, the newspapers feasted on the royal affairs and divorces. Charles and Diana's marriage failed. And in 1997, Diana died in a traffic accident. The worldwide outpouring of sympathy was overwhelming, but the royal family struggled to find sympathetic words.
She was an exceptional and gifted human being. In good times and bad, she never lost her capacity to smile and laugh, nor to inspire others with her warmth and kindness.
This was when the royals' popularity hit an all-time low. Diana's sons, Princes William and Harry, did not talk about the trauma of their mother's death until years later. When Harry's marriage to US television star Meghan Markle was repeatedly exploited by the tabloids, the couple made a radical exit. They officially turned their backs on the royal family, ultimately moving to the United States. There, they complained in interviews about racism in the media and also in the palace. Compared to the other members of the royal family, the Queen led a quiet marriage. She was married to her childhood sweetheart, Prince Philip, for 73 years. He was an important pillar of support for her, which made the moment of parting all the more difficult. In the spring of 2021, Philip died, aged 99. Owing to the coronavirus pandemic, the funeral took place with a very small circle of mourners. Elizabeth was alone. It was an image that touched many. But only a few days later, she was again representing the country, receiving ambassadors via video conference and participating in Zoom meetings with scientists.
And it's wonderful work you're all doing. So it's a great pleasure to see you all.
Thank you so much, Your Majesty.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Bye.
In a world that has changed radically, Elizabeth was a constant mainstay. Committed to tradition, but not closed to the new. And most of the critics of the British royal family paid tribute to the Queen for her long life in service to her country and to the Commonwealth.
You are watching a special edition of DW News. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II has died. She was 96 years old. She was the longest reigning monarch and head of state in the world. Her death means her son Charles succeeds her immediately. He's expected to be officially proclaimed king tomorrow and embark on a tour of the United Kingdom over the coming days. Britons will observe a period of mourning ahead of the royal funeral. The Queen has been gradually stepping back from public duties in recent years due to failing health. But she performed her last official duties on Tuesday when she appointed Liz Truss as the new Prime Minister. We're just looking at pictures here from outside of Buckingham Palace as crowds gather. I'd like to come back into the studio for more analysis. My colleague, Alex Forrest Whiting, joins me now. Alex, this is an event of monumental proportions. Can you tell us a little bit about what this will mean, not just for the United Kingdom, but for the world?
Well, the Queen was obviously the Queen of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, but she was also the head of state of 14 other states and countries, including, for example, Australia and Canada and others as well. She played a huge role across the globe. You have to remember that when she came to reign 70 years ago, Britain had an empire, and many of those countries obviously no longer ruled by Britain, but are still part of the Commonwealth, so very important to the UK, and the Commonwealth was presided over by Queen Elizabeth. So she played a very, very important global role, very close to many people's hearts.
Alex, I just want to jump in there. We're just seeing a footman come out of Buckingham Palace and post a notice on the gates there. That makes it official, the official public notice that Queen Elizabeth has passed away.
And just look at the crowd there. It's extraordinary, the number of people who are now gathering at Buckingham Palace. It really, I cannot stress just what a huge moment this is for not just the United Kingdom, but countries across the world. She had been on her throne for 70 years, 7 decades, during a time in which the world has significantly changed, and I think had really been such a bedrock for particularly Britain, and it will be difficult to imagine how life will continue without her. And I imagine that thousands, tens of thousands of people will now be gathering outside Buckingham Palace and across London, as well, of course, to as close to Balmoral Castle up in the north of Scotland as they can get. The Queen, of course, many would have expected her to be in London for this moment. That's how operations had been planned for when she was to pass away. But she is in Scotland, in Scotland at Balmoral, which does mean that everything that had been planned will change quite significantly.
And we knew she was unwell. That announcement made midday today that the Buckingham Palace and the doctors were concerned about her. They called the family to rush up to Balmoral She should have been here at Buckingham Palace, but because of those mobility issues you've mentioned, she was up at her home in Scotland. We now know that Charles, the Prince of Wales, is the new king. 73 years old. He's the longest waiting heir apparent. He's also going to be the oldest monarch to take the British throne. Can you tell us a little bit more about the man who will be replacing Queen Elizabeth II?
Well, obviously, as you say, he has been waiting almost a lifetime for this role. I think it has been, at times, very difficult for him, but he has played, I think it's fair to say, in the past few years, a very good second fiddle to his mother, the Queen. He has had to take over various roles for her. For example, the state opening of Parliament this year in the House of Lords, which is a big ceremonial role that the Queen would always do. She couldn't do it this year. Prince, now King Charles, had to do that. Also, he was at other events that she would normally have been at, for example, the Remembrance Day services, where she would always go, and she couldn't go to those either. So I think that this comes as a very... I mean, Prince Charles, I keep calling him Prince Charles, King Charles, will have been waiting for this for some time, but, you know, he's still the Queen's son, and I imagine there are many emotions that are going through his mind at the moment, having to say farewell to his mother and knowing now that he has to try to carry her mantle. She was a woman who was so loved across the world, particularly in the past few years, and he now has to step into that role and try to fill some very big shoes.
And Alex, we've just seen those live pictures of that notice announcing the death of Queen Elizabeth posted on the gates of Buckingham Palace. We do want to find out more about the new King Charles. We know that he's been taking over many of the Queen's duties, travelling abroad in her place. Let's see if we can take a look now at the man who has waited so long to be king.
He was dubbed the Perpetual Prince, waiting to be king longer than any other heir to the throne before him. Charles Philip Arthur George Mountbatten Windsor was born in 1948, the first son of Princess Elizabeth. He was 4 years old at his mother's coronation.
Queen Elizabeth II passes from the Abbey, consecrated and dedicated to her life work.
After attending boarding school and graduating from Cambridge University, Charles continued royal tradition by serving in the Royal Air Force and Royal Navy. At 32, the world's most eligible bachelor announced his engagement to Lady Diana Spencer, 13 years his junior.
Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
The couple married in July 1981. It was the wedding of the century and captured the world's imagination. Thousands came out to cheer, and around the globe, hundreds of millions watched the ceremony on their TV screens.
Where are we going?
The couple had 2 sons, William and Harry. But the fairy tale wasn't to last. Charles and his wife seemed increasingly unhappy. The press published leaked phone conversations that showed Charles was having an affair with a former girlfriend, Camilla Parker Bowles. In 1992, they made their split official.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that, with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate.
A year after the couple divorced, Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris after being hounded by paparazzi. Charles accompanied her body back to Britain. There was an outpouring of public grief at Diana's death, and with the scandals surrounding their marriage not yet forgotten, public opinion of Prince Charles and the royal family had never been so low. Charles continued to dedicate himself to his royal duties and his charitable causes, most notably the Prince's Trust, a charity he set up to help improve the lives of disadvantaged young people. His relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles continued to develop, and in 2005 the couple were married in a civil ceremony. Together they have carried on Charles' work on sustainability. He has always been passionate about the environment, promoting organic farming and biodiversity on his estate, but also on a global stage. At the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, he urged global leaders to do more to limit global warming.
The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of prevention. Time has quite literally run out.
This will include
As his mother
bringing
stepped
forward
back
measures
from some of her responsibilities in recent years, and especially after the death of his father, Prince Philip, Charles took a more significant and active part in discharging royal duties. From king in waiting to king in training, now Charles will take on the role that he has been preparing for his entire life.
You're watching DW News. If you're just joining us, we do have some breaking news that Britain's Queen Elizabeth II has died. She was 96 years old. The longest reigning monarch and head of state in the world. Her death now means her son Charles succeeds her immediately. He's expected to be officially proclaimed king tomorrow and embark on a tour of the United Kingdom over the coming days. You're looking there at footage of the notice saying that the Queen has died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. That is, of course, her home in Scotland. Now, Britons are going to be observing a period of mourning ahead of the royal funeral. The Queen had been gradually stepping back from public duties in recent years due to her failing health. But she did perform her last official duties just this Tuesday when she appointed Liz Truss as the new UK Prime Minister and saw that transfer of power from former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I want to see if we can get across to our correspondent in London, Birgit Maas. Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us the latest from London on the death of the Queen?
Well, it has just been formally announced. And of course, this is a really momentous day, I think, for the British nation, because for many people, the Queen has just always been there. She's been such a steadfast royal and really leading the country, especially recently through quite tough times when Britain is really in turmoil and seeing an energy crisis, a cost of living crisis. And now, during this time, to lose the monarch that's really presented this stability over the decades, I think that will be very, very tough for a lot of British people. And we don't know much more than what Buckingham Palace has announced. We know that she hasn't been in great health, but then again, we've only 2 days ago seen her say goodbye to Prime Minister Boris Johnson when he flew up to Balmoral for his last visit as a Prime Minister, and she met Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, only 2 days ago, and we've seen pictures of her smiling at Liz Truss. She was having a walking stick, but she was, really welcoming the new Prime Minister and carrying out her duties really up to the end. So that is quite remarkable.
We are just seeing some vehicles coming out of the gates. However, on that notice we just saw posted to the gates of Buckingham Palace the information that the King and Queen consort will be returning to London tomorrow after spending the night at Balmoral, the home in Scotland. Birgit, is it fair to say that the atmosphere in Britain is going to be one of mourning now?
It is definitely one of mourning. It's going to be we're expecting that there will be some sort of holiday, a day of mourning, and Parliament for the moment cannot pass any new law. So it's going to be something that is momentous for the country, and not just for the UK. I mean, obviously, across the world, the Queen is being admired. She's head of state of other countries. So it's something that ripples not just through the UK, but also, I think, throughout the world. And there's been so much attention directed at the British royal family. Whatever happens to them is being followed across the world. So yes, for the UK, but also around the world, is going to be be a very, very sad and reflective moment, I think, for a lot of people.
How much of a sense is there that this is the end of an era?
There is definitely the sense that it's the end of an era. I mean, the Queen, she's done 21, I think, over 21 visits over the decades. She's been the patron of over 500 charities or organizations. So she's been out and about, and she's met so many people. I personally know so many people who have somehow met the Queen in some capacity, shaken her hand, and so she is she's been just always there. When it was the Diamond Jubilee, I spoke to a few ladies that were just preparing for a party in her honor, and what they admired in her was that she has such a strong work ethic, that she's almost never taken any time off, even most recently when her health was not fantastic anymore and she had COVID earlier in the year, that she's been carrying out her duties via Zoom. So she's always been there, and there's been this sense, I think, in the country that she's just always been around, and she's been this role model of just carrying on and doing what needs to get done. And this is, I think, what people will be missing.
And Birgit, it's certainly been a long and difficult day. Can you tell us a little bit about how the media and British institutions have been preparing for this? I mean, a lot of the protocol was meant to be secret.
Yes, but it has been reported. So this is going to be an intense 10 days when the Queen's we don't know it for sure, but we're expecting that the Queen will be, because she has died in Scotland, she will be laid to rest in Edinburgh, and people will be expected for the next days to come there and pay their respects. And then it's expected that the body will be carried to London, where she will lay to rest. So the funeral is expected to be in 10 days. And how exactly that will unfold with travel from Scotland to London, I think we will know more about that soon.
All right, Birgit Maas reporting for us from London. Thank you so much for that.